Hello out there in podcast land. This is the Rocker Dog Podcast, the only show that talks to musicians about their canine companions. I'm your host, Tim Dill, dog dad to the infamous Charlie the Golden Doodle, and today we have a wonderful talk with singer-songwriter Mark Erelli, whose stirring new album, Lay Your Darkness Down, was just released on February 3rd and was created in the wake of a life-changing diagnosis, which we will soon discuss. But first, let's meet his chicken-stalking rocker dog.
Yeah, our dog is a rescue dog. His name is Leo, and he's mostly a Lab-Weimaraner mix. He kind of looks like a skinnier, pointier yellow lab, and he is just about 2.5 years old, a little bit older, and he's just a very sweet, very well-behaved, just very affectionate dog.
I'm surprised to hear the Weimaraner. Did you guys do a DNA, or was that what the shelter told you?
Yeah, no, we did the DNA thing. My wife gave it to me for Christmas I think last year. And so we did the test, and I was surprised too. Interestingly enough, when we were walking in the woods with him one day, another woman passed us, and she said, "Oh, your dog is beautiful. Is that a Lab-Weimaraner mix?" And we were like, "I don't know. He's a rescue, you know." And when we got the DNA done, sure enough, that's exactly what they said he was. That's like 70% of what's in there, and then the rest is just a bunch of other things. So yeah, she really had him pegged right from the get-go. And once you know that he's a Lab-Weimaraner mix, you really see it. He looks kind of generally like a yellow lab, but then when you look in his face, he's got that kind of slightly anxious, slightly nervous, incredibly focused, stare into your soul gaze that like a Weimaraner has,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. That's in my note, that he stares into souls. There's a story on your Instagram about a woman at a gas station who said she couldn't turn away.
Yeah, she was looking at my car, and I couldn't figure out what she was looking at, and I didn't even realize that Leo was sitting in the passenger seat as he normally is. I can't get him to ride anywhere else in a car but the passenger seat or the center console if there's two of us there. And he was in the center, he was in the passenger seat, and he was looking at her and she was looking at him, and she just managed to pull herself away after a few moments and said in the best Boston accent, "Your dog was staring into my soul." And he does that, he's got that. There's a lot of people that have, met him that I've never, described as such, that say like, "Gosh, he's got this real soulful stare," and he really does. It's I spend a lot of time just kind of gazing into his eyes.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, my dog has a similar. Well, there's just times when I look at him and I think, "Are you reincarnated of someone I know, or someone who might know me from my past, or a distant relative?"
I know, right? I wouldn't have given credence to any of this stuff, before I had a dog. I did have one dog growing up. We had a stray poodle who showed up at our back door one day, and it was dinner time, and I remember my dad said, "Don't let it in," and my mom let it in, and she waddled into the kitchen, went right under our kitchen table where we were all seated down for dinner, and promptly fell asleep. And she became our dog for, a year or so until she passed away. I never had a dog after that. Just as a musician, traveling musician, it's not really a life well suited for a dog. You either have to go like full drifter,
Right,
and like live out of your RV or your van or whatever. And I know people that have dogs that do that and make it work. Or you have to be super famous and have like a dog on the tour bus, and I know people that do that. But anything in the middle is really hard to kind of manage. And so for years, I guess I just shut down that part of my heart to the point where my family didn't even think I liked dogs. And
right.
I love dogs. I just didn't want to confront that I couldn't have one. And my boys had begged me for 5 or 6 years. And then when the pandemic hit, they're like, "Dad, you're home now all the time, like we can get a dog." And I still held out another 6 months, but I finally caved in, and it was one of the best things I've ever done.
What was the process? How did you go about? I'm glad to hear you went rescue, but once you're with rescue, did you have a certain breed in mind, or did you go there and did Leo kind of pick you out?
Well, I've always wanted, I know I don't hear people use the word mutt very often now, but I always wanted a mutt. I knew that they were kind of tended to be healthier and just, very sweet and good natured. And that's just what I wanted. And so, I knew that that was probably what we were going to get as a rescue. We looked into some breeds, but they were just so expensive and even more expensive during the early days of the pandemic. And I couldn't justify spending that much on a dog. And there are plenty of dogs that need homes. So we heard about through a friend this rescue place up here in the North Shore of Massachusetts called Sweet Paws Rescue. And these folks are just fantastic. And a lot of people, as the narrative goes, were trying to get dogs during the pandemic, and Sweet Paws is really careful about not having to rehome, take dogs
Yeah.
back and rehome them. I mean, I think it would have been easier to adopt an actual human child than it was. There were like several multi-hour Zooms. One of them was just like a 2.5 hour Zoom presentation on the roles that dogs can play in some areas in the culture down south. They were trying to explain like why so many of their dogs come from down south. Leo's from Mississippi. I mean, they just wanted you to know the history. I mean, most people that are getting a dog, I think, they just want like the cute dog,
Right.
like yesterday. They don't want to do a history lesson in 2.5 hours on Zoom. But we went through this whole process, and it really winnows down, I think, people that are probably not, better off without out taking on the responsibility. But we were up for it, and our contact there said, you guys, I thought we might get an older dog because it just might be easier for us to handle. And she said, well, I wouldn't mind you guys having a puppy, but because I was the only one that was like without a job at the time. My wife is in healthcare. She was working overtime,
Oh, geez.
still is. And my kids were both on, remote school. So she said, Mark, you're going to be the one that has to take care of the puppy if you get a puppy, and you have to be okay with that. And, I said, okay, well, I think I am. And she sent us pictures of Leo, who was named Parker at the time. We just melted. It just melted. He was just everyone. We thought that they were going to be sending us multiple dogs, but she was like, no, I'm sending you one dog that I've chosen out for you. And if you don't want this dog, you can, turn him down, and then you'll wait for the next dog. And then we were like, okay. So we kind of hemmed and hawed, but we realized that everybody in the house had been checking the pictures on their phone, throughout the day or so, and just kind of forming their own relationship with Leo just through his picture.
Right.
And so I texted her back and I said, I think this is our dog. And man, he really was. He's just a perfect match for our family. And true to the rescue organization's word, I am definitely his main person. I spent a lot of time with that dog in the very early days, training and working with him. We've become quite attached very quickly.
How old are your boys?
They're 12 and 15. So
So a
the
couple years
youngest,
back, they're
yeah,
tweens.
yep. And the youngest one's been asking me for a dog since he was 4 or 5. I mean, he's always wanted a dog. One of the reasons that we thought getting a dog might be helpful is to help our youngest with some kind of emotional stuff, just having another thing to care for around the house and keep him company. Really, he's kind of grown into that. The dog Leo now sleeps in our youngest bed, and he was in the crate for months, and then he was in our bed for a little bit, and I was like, I love him, but I don't love him this much. And so now he sleeps in our youngest bed, and he kind of, when I come in there in the morning, most days, my youngest is, crashed out, and Leo is either staring at the door with his head on my youngest, like across his, resting his chin on his legs, or he's
Mhm.
staring out the window in the same position. He's like keeping watch over him. It's really, really sweet.
That's great. Now, was there any guise of we're going to teach the kids responsibility? This dog's going to be,
Yeah.
a lesson learner, which usually go out the window in the first 48 hours, and dad becomes,
Yeah.
you know, the dog dad, and luckily the favorite,
Yeah.
of the dog.
Yeah. Everyone loves to pat him. Fewer of us love to walk him, and no one really loves to pick up his poop. So, that's kind of the way it works. I will say my older son is and has right from the beginning been very good with him. I had a way that I wanted to be with the dog, and it was inspired by I don't know if you're familiar with these monks in upstate New York. They're called the monks of the New Skeet Monastery, and they do dog training, and they raise purebred German shepherds, and they have published several books on dog behavior and training, and they just had a really wonderful vibe about them. And I read a couple of the books, and I thought, okay, this is how I want to raise my dog. I want him to be well socialized with other dogs and other humans so that he can be a part of our life, especially when I eventually, return to my job. If he needs to come along, I need him to be able to kind of handle that,
Mm.
Um, so I would tell the kids, well, here's what the monks say to do, And my oldest from the beginning was very good with that. He had a very intuitive grasp of how to kind of positively reinforce and when to correct. And so the kids have gotten a little better with the dog responsibility, mostly in just like if I need to go out to a gig and my wife wants to come, we're like, you can't go out. You got to stay home with the dog, and
Right.
you got to babysit the dog. If we said they had to babysit each other, they would complain to no end, but they both will, babysit the dog.
Right. Now, I'm guessing that Leo doesn't have separation anxiety, at least from you.
Yeah, he's pretty good. We've been, I was really careful because a lot of the dogs in the pandemic that, were adopted or were around their humans 24/7. I was really careful to kind of like when he was ready for it to leave him alone for 15 or 20 minutes, and come back and to kind of stretch that time and get him used to being alone a little bit more. And he was crate trained in his early years, so he was very comfortable in there. So he's pretty good being left alone for, we've done 3 to like, I think one time it was like close to 6 hours, which I felt a little bit uncomfortable with, but we came home and he was fine and he was happy to see everybody.
Yeah.
And, so he does pretty well, despite the fact that he can be a pretty anxious dog in some situations.
I've also noticed that you've taken him, I believe, on a few gigs here and there. How is
Just
he
a
there?
couple.
Is he super social with strangers or other dogs?
Leo seems to know something about other people and other dogs that we don't know. There's some people he will not go to at all, and I can't figure it out.
It's funny. I keep hearing that. I hear that more and more from different guests.
Yeah, and some dogs that he's a very dominant dog. He's not aggressive, but he likes to be, alpha. But there's some dogs that he just will, growl and snarl at, that very deep kind of disconcerting snarl. And you think like, what is up? It's just a golden doodle. What could possibly be the problem? But he seems to have this internal radar. So I've taken him on a couple gigs. I guess I've only ever really crated him on the gigs. I haven't taken him since he's been mostly out of the crate. The one time I did take him to this gig that I was playing on at a farm, basically these people's house, and he did great. They have a dog. It was like their dog was showing my dog around, and everything was wonderful and perfectly, bucolic until Leo spied the flock of chickens that roamed around on their property. And Leo had met pigeons and squirrels before and rabbits, but he had never seen a flock of chickens. And of course, his dog food is chickens. So I don't know if something just set him off, but he chased that flock all around their yard, into the woods, out of the woods. And I was laughing at first, and then I realized like, oh, this is not good. And when I caught up with him, he had a chicken in his mouth, and
Oh no.
I was like, leave it, Leo, leave it, And he was not leaving it. And he was looking me dead in the eye. Like he heard me, Everybody heard me. And I finally got the chicken out of its mouth. The chicken scattered, and Leo went off into the crate. And I was so apologetic. These are good friends, and they're like, "Did he get the rooster?" And I said, I don't know if it was a rooster or what, they're like, well, if he got the rooster, that's great, So anyway, we did the gig, and I did let him out of the crate during sound check a little bit. And he was, as opposed to roaming all around the property, he went up on stage with me and sat down at my feet on my pedal board. So like, that's where he wanted to be. Like I couldn't even unmute my guitar, So he wants to be near me. I can envision a day where he is comfortable enough where he's like that old dog that just kind of lies on stage with you and like waits for you to finish all your,
Yeah.
singing and running around, and then comes off with you. Just a postscript to that story. The chicken was fine. It was missing a few feathers in the next day, but it had a great story to tell the others in the roost.
That's too funny. Too funny. Now, why? I'm sorry to jump around, but I just realized I wanted to ask this earlier. But the name change, did Leo have any significance, or what was the reason behind the? Did you just want to put your own stamp on the dog?
We did, but his name was Parker when we got him. My youngest son's best friend's name is Parker, and so one day before Parker had arrived, he was on his way up from down south. I said, my youngest son, I just picked him up at his friend's house, and he said, Dad, how big do you think Parker will be when he's all grown up? And I said, well, he's a pretty big guy. I think, I'm 6 feet. He'll probably be at least 6 feet. And he goes, you think our dog's going to be 6 feet tall? And I said, no, I thought you were talking about your friend. I was like, this is why we have to change the name. It's going to be too confusing. Plus, nobody in Boston can pronounce the letter R, and there's 2 of them in Parker. So I was like, I can't deal with people calling my dog Paca all the time. So we did a family campaign to find a new name. I really liked Levon after the great rock and roll drummer. 3 of the 4 of us really liked Utah, where we've done a lot of vacations as a family. And my father-in-law was the one that suggested Leo after a dog that he had when he was growing up. And that was the one that stuck. And I'm really glad that it did, because it's an easy name to call out. I can't think of him as anything other than Leo at this point.
Yeah. You have another post of yours, you said you're an introverted owner with an extroverted dog, which I found funny because actually another artist I spoke to yesterday for the show said that, when he's out touring on his own, a lot of times he keeps to himself and he'll go to microbreweries and this and that and sit. He said, but when he brings his dog anywhere, it forces him to be social because everyone comes over to the dog and everyone's got to, is that kind of a same situation with you?
Absolutely. Yep. And of course there's this whole class of quote unquote dog people, right? Which I've always been a dog person, but if you're a dog person and you don't have a dog, you're in different circles.
Yep.
Once you have a dog, there's this whole community that you kind of gain access to if you are so inclined. So yeah, I am. And Leo, even now, if someone is approaching us, he's just going to lie down. If it's another person or another dog, he wants to meet that dog or that person. And there's no way I can get past that person without letting him, sniff or say hi. He just wants to meet everybody. And honestly, his favorite, one of the things they told us in that Zoom about, dogs down south, they talked about like dogs being chained up in the yard, all year round in certain places. And, I don't mean to, I know you're down south. I certainly don't mean to generalize. They were talking about specific places, but Leo's favorite thing to be is just on the leash, laying at the top of the driveway, right at the edge of the sidewalk where he can watch the cars and watch the people come by on the sidewalk. I think if I could chain him up by the side of the road, he would be the happiest. He'd be living his best life,
Yeah.
So there's many times when I'll just be standing out at the top of my driveway by the sidewalk with the dog. I feel like I should be waving to everybody as they go by. And people, we live on a busy street and there's street lights at either end of our block. So there will frequently be stop traffic up there. And, people will roll down their windows and have conversations with us or talk to, so tell Leo what a good dog or how handsome he is. It's really, so he does make friends for me, even if
Yeah.
they're temporary.
Now, I want to bring up, I understand a couple of years ago you had quite a, life-changing episode in your life where you were
Yeah.
diagnosed with, I don't know if I'll say this right, the retinitis pigmentosa.
Yes. Yep. That's yeah. So 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short, and it starts with changes and degradation to your peripheral and night vision. And that's kind of where I am now. I can no longer drive at night, and I don't see very well in the dark at all. And it progresses along a very uncertain, nonlinear progression towards legal blindness, and in some cases, total blindness. So yeah, we got Leo on September 14th, and I think October 16th I was diagnosed. So Leo kind of came into our life right before a time of great emotional upheaval. And, he's just been instrumental to me. He's, a lot of dogs seem to just know when you need them,
Mm-hmm.
and Leo definitely has that. And at a time when, I stopped driving at night immediately, at a time when I would get anxious and kind of grouchy as the sun was going down, and I knew that my actions were going to be, extremely curtailed. Leo, I just, at a time when I felt like I was just losing so much agency in my life, Leo was something that I could do. He was something that I could take care for, like there are some things like that the boys are doing now that they're older and more active that I can't keep up with my eyes, like if we're playing catch in the backyard and it's like a sunny day and there's like the balls going in and out of sun and shadow, I could get a ball in the face very easily. And, they like to go out and be with their friends a little bit later at night now, or they have sports later at night and I can't pick them up. So there's some things with the boys that I can't really do, that my wife has had to pick up the slack. And yet Leo, I can manage Leo. I can get him. I take him out on the leash. I take him to the dog park every day. I play with him. I care for him, to feed him, and buy all the stuff. And it was an outlet where I felt like I had some agency, and I felt like I got just pure, unadulterated, unconditional love.
Right.
At a time when I didn't really even have that for myself. I mean, I was getting plenty of love from my family. I don't mean to give them short shrift at all, but I didn't have it for myself for a period there. It was in post diagnosis with the RP. There was a lot of catastrophic thinking. You start to think like, oh, this part of my life is over. This part of my life will never be the same. And then with the dog, we were still getting to know each other. We'd only had him for, a month. And it's like having a kid when they're young. The milestones come so fast and furious. Every day is like interacting with a new being. And it was just this pure sense of like infinite possibility in this new relationship that was filled completely with unconditional love. And that was at a time when I really needed it. Yeah, I get a little emotional just talking about it, because I don't know. I mean, I would have found what I needed from the people in my life for sure. And I have amazing people, both in my family and my musical community. But Leo was just a real welcome focal point for me. Also at a time when my career was literally evaporated. So it was a very uncertain time, and Leo was this concrete thing that needed to be taken care of every day. And there were a lot of things I couldn't do. I couldn't do gigs. I couldn't go out after dark. Couldn't do this or couldn't do that. But I could walk this dog, I could play with him, I could train him, I could teach him. And so I threw myself into that, and it was a real welcome distraction from, some very, very challenging things in my life.
Well, I mean, that's great to hear because I think everyone who's a dog lover understands that unconditional love, but they don't ever get to experience that on a deeper level or a more profound level like you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, he sees you, I don't know. I just don't know any other way to explain it. People that have never met him before, one look in his eyes and the two things that everyone says are, what a handsome dog, and oh my God, his the way that he looks into your eyes. And for me, eyes at the time it was a very sensitive kind of emotionally charged thing, to think about my eyes, to think about how they were changing, to think about how I couldn't really know how they were going to change. So to kind of have this relationship to each other, he responds to my commands, obviously, but a lot of the communication is nonverbal, just through your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and at a time when you feel like your eyes are damaged, he doesn't seem to really see that. He kind of takes it at face value. And of course, he doesn't understand what retinitis pigmentosa is. And so our relationship has been a really empowering thing. And when they told me that I was going to get to talk about my dog, in the context of like my music and my life, I was like so excited because he's just been, he figures heavily in my social media. I'm not afraid. Like, if I don't have any gigs to promote, I'm definitely just posting a cute picture
Yeah.
of Leo. But it's just, he's helped me kind of regain a sense of agency, and then by extension, I could kind of say, okay, if I can get that sense of agency back in my personal life, maybe we can figure this out in my professional life. And as things started to come back online, and as I started to kind of say, okay, this is bad, but it's not as bad as it's going to be yet. There's still work to be done. Like, how are you going to work? What are the problems? What are the solutions? He really got me in that mindset, right? Because dogs have to be, he has to be taken care of every day. He has to be fed, he has to be taken out, he has to get exercise. In the suburbs where we live, he can't really be off leash too many times,
Yeah.
around our house. We live in a busy street. These are things that have to be taken care of every day. They're problems, if you will, that need to be solved. Once my life and my work started coming back online a little bit more, I had to deal with a whole new set of problems. Like, how do I get from point A to point B, or how do I get back I can get there, but I can't get back after dark, that kind of thing. That problem solving mentality was something that the dog kind of primed my mind, in that, primed the pump of my mind, so to
Right.
speak, to kind of be in that sort of mindset.
Well, it's great to see how you've worked him into, like, for instance, the video for You're Going to Want to
Oh,
Remember This.
yeah. Yeah. He was a big star in that
Was he good?
video.
Was he a good, was he good on set? Like, did he do what he needed to do? Did he walk through where he needed to walk through?
Oh yeah. If you have treats, he'll do anything. He's very, very motivated by food. So, yeah, there's one scene where he's walking, it's in the video. I think it's maybe a second and a half or 2.5 seconds of him walking down the steps and out the door. And we probably shot that 12 times. I don't know what the guy was looking for, but he kept asking us to redo it. And like, every time I could see, after, half a dozen times, Leo was like, wait, we're doing it again. But every time, those treats,
That's 12.
he,
Yeah, that's 12 treats.
yeah, it's almost like he could do the math or something. But I knew I wanted him in that video, for all the reasons I've already talked about. And, I'm not ashamed to admit I have a similar feeling about him, and seeing him experience life, and seeing him delight in new things, and seeing him grow up, as I do with any other member of my family.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes will think, like, pay attention, because like, you're gonna remember, that the way that he like wiggles when he's really excited. Like, someday you may not be able to see that. Like, it's really cute, and it warms the heart, and like, just take note.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted him in that video, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, everything came out really great. I'll definitely encourage people to check it out.
Oh,
It's a
that'd be
great
great.
video and great song.
Thanks.
Any plans for him to be put on merchandise?
I'll have to consider that. I will say I do, as you know, I press him in regularly into service to promote my gigs because it seems like
Yeah.
on social media I could post, pictures of myself till the cows come home, and the number of likes, or impressions that you get from those versus when I post a cute dog picture. It took me about two posts to realize, like, okay, Leo is going to be promoting my shows, and everyone's like, are you going to give him his own Instagram account? I was like, hell no, he works for me,
Yeah, exactly.
he's on the payroll and he gets paid in treats, and he's going to promote dad's gigs, and that's just the way that it is.
That's funny.
uh
All right. Well, listen, I end each show with what I call the zoomies, and that's the
okay.
five last quick questions.
The lightning round, the zoomies.
The lightning
That's
round, exactly.
fantastic.
That's the term I've failed to use, but that's what I need to use.
That's
This is
perfect.
the lightning round. So the first question is, do you kiss Leo on the mouth?
Not on the mouth, no.
Okay, that's two in a row now. Okay.
I know where that mouth has been. I'm not kissing him on the mouth.
Okay. Question two is, has he licked anyone famous, well known, fellow musicians?
That's funny. No, he's not really a licker or a kisser. Not even of me. He's a nuzzler. And hasn't really. He doesn't have that relationship with any other people. I should note that I have been nuzzled by Emmylou Harris's giant poodle at
Oh,
backstage at Newport Folk Festival years and years ago.
that's good to know. That's a good one.
Yeah, quite invasively. Yeah, he got me right in the crotch, came out of nowhere, and I didn't know what to do. It's a giant poodle, and I looked up, and all I see is Emmy Lou just kind of smiling and shaking her head on her way to the stage. I was like, "What is even happening right now?" So Leo does not kiss other people, but I have been nuzzled by other famous
I
people's
love it.
dogs.
I love it. Great story. Okay, question three is, if Leo was to, it sounds like one of the answers is he's your marketing director to your musical career. But if he gets laid off of that job, where would he fall in the music realm? Would he be a fan, a critic, a roadie, or a groupie?
Oh, he'd be a groupie. Yeah, he would be. He's on my six. You know, you can't. He would always know what hotel I was in. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Question four, do you use a dog voice to speak to him?
We do. My wife does that more than I do. She will frequently narrate what she imagines his thoughts to be, and it's pretty hysterical.
So she's given him a dog. She's
She has given
speaking
him a
for
dog.
him.
Yeah.
Does she speak
Yes.
to him in a cutesy voice, or do you use a cutesy voice to him?
Yeah, I will do that on occasion for sure. But mostly I kind of talk. I probably talk to him a little bit like I talked to my kids when they were very young.
Right. Yeah. Okay, last question is there a charity or dog organization you'd like to just call attention to?
Well, the Sweet Paws rescue organization where we adopted him from. We haven't had much contact with them since we adopted from them, but they did such a great job assessing our family, even in the heights of the pandemic when they couldn't even do like a home visit. They just really, really put a lot of care into the process, and they nailed it on literally the first dog. They just really go the extra mile, and they're always looking for support. So I would encourage folks to look them up and support them if they're so inclined.
Great, great. I'll get some more information on them and include it in the outro.
Oh, great.
Is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, well, I literally just earlier this month put out my brand new solo record. It's called Lay Your Darkness Down. I won't say it's a record about blindness, quote unquote, but it's a collection of songs that were written from, kind of an emotional place that I don't think I could have gotten to had I not been losing my sight. So they're not songs about blindness, but I couldn't have written them before this diagnosis, I don't think. So there's a lot of stuff that's really close to the bone, and a lot of hope and light and darkness kind of commingling in these songs. And it rocks. It's not it's a heavy record, but it's not a sad record, you know.
Okay.
So that came out earlier this month, and then next month in March, early March, I'll be hitting the road for the first tour, you know, tour dates in support of the new record, which was something that I couldn't do when I put out my previous record in March of 2020. So I'm really excited to kind of get a shot at doing it right this time around.
That's great. You're going to cover a lot of ground. Is it going to be regional? Is it going to be?
I'll be getting, you know, further afield than I have in recent years, including a return to the West Coast, which has been probably a decade, and definitely down south. Hopefully I'll get somewhere within striking distance of you in North Carolina. It'd be great to say hi in person.
Yeah, I'll bring Charlie.
Oh, I would love that.
All right. Well, Mark, I appreciate you taking your time, sharing your story, and introducing us to Leo. I wish you the best of luck. And like you said, I hope you and I can cross paths soon.
Oh, that'd be great, man. Thanks so much for talking. And I'm really glad I kept it under an hour. I was worried I was going to, you know, talk for all day about how much I love this dog. So I appreciate the chance.
I think my audience know how it is. They can go on forever about their dogs, and as I could. So
that's great.
All right. Thanks again.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Mark Erelli, for sharing such a personal and profound story with us. For tour dates, links to his new LP, Lay Your Darkness Down, and more, go to markerelli.com. The last name is Erelli. Mark chose to give a well-deserved shout-out to the organization he got his beloved dog through, and that was Sweet Paws Rescue, a foster-based organization that is committed to using all possible resources to save victimized and neglected animals. Their unwavering goal is to find forever homes for dogs, cats, and other animals in need of rescue and refuge so they can live out the remainder of their lives in comfort and happiness. To adopt, foster, volunteer, or donate, go to sweetpawsrescue.org to find out more. Thanks to everyone out there for listening. We're very active on Instagram with updates and episode info, so give us a follow at Rocker Dog Podcast. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode like the one we have coming up next week, with a female singer-songwriter who had a strong premonition she'd find a dog on a long road trip she had just embarked on, only to have it come true. So please join us for that story. Until then, be good to your dogs, save the dogs, adopt the dogs, foster the dogs, love the dogs. So long, everybody.